Hi everyone, welcome to the Highlights from Ukraine podcast, your daily audio summary of the latest news reported in the Ukrainian media. My name is Artem, and here is the news. For 1008 days, Ukraine defends itself against the forces of the Russian invasion. Ukraine is under a massive missile attack from Russia at the moment. There are reports of explosions in Kyiv, Mykolaiv, and Vinnytsia regions. Emergency power outages have been initiated. Associated Press informs that the US administration of Joe Biden is urging Ukraine to amend its conscription law to enable the drafting of men as young as 18 and to expedite the expansion of its armed forces personnel, reports European Pravda. An anonymous Biden administration official said that the White House is urging Ukraine to lower its draft age from 25 to 18 to expand the pool of men eligible for conscription. According to the official, the pure math of Ukraine's current situation is that it needs more troops to fight the war. Associated Press also reported that according to European officials who spoke on condition of anonymity, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is facing concerns from other Western allies who believe Ukraine's challenge lies in personnel shortages rather than a lack of weapons. On 18th of November, US National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan stated that Ukraine had received a significant supply of various American weapons, but continued to face challenges on the battlefield, attributing difficulties to issues with mobilization. Presidential Communications Advisor Dmytro Litvin responded to US calls, noting that the promised weapons are not arriving on time and there are not enough weapons to equip already mobilized soldiers. Quote, "It makes no sense to hear calls for Ukraine to lower the mobilization age, supposedly in order to call up more men, when we see that previously announced equipment is not arriving on time," unquote. Litvin added that, quote, "Partners have full access to the data and can compare promises with actual implementation," unquote. The Wall Street Journal informs that the Biden administration will not be able to send military aid to Ukraine for all the funds approved by Congress before the end of its term in January 2025, and part of the relevant powers will pass to Donald Trump's team, reports Ukrainska Pravda. Interlocutors in the White House and Congress said that currently the Biden administration has more than $6.5 billion to transfer equipment to Ukraine from warehouses and reserves of the US Army, which it hoped to use up completely before the end of its term on January 20th. But the Pentagon says that they have reached the limit of weapons that they can send to Ukraine each month without harming their own combat capability, and are also facing logistical problems in delivering weapons to Ukrainian forces. According to estimates, in order to spend all the funds, the US would have to send Ukraine more than $110 million worth of weapons every day. That is almost $3 billion during December-January. A Wall Street Journal congressional source said that it is impossible. A source in the Pentagon says that the US currently plans to transfer from its stockpiles of weapons to Ukraine worth between $500 and $750 million per month. These supplies will mainly include ammunition and artillery, which are easier to transport. It can take months to deliver heavier equipment. Unused funds will thus be at the disposal of the future administration of Donald Trump. It is currently unknown what he will do with the supplies of weapons to Ukraine. In addition to funding for supplies from US Army warehouses, the Biden administration also has more than $2 billion to finance long-term contracts for the supply of weapons to Kyiv. A Wall Street Journal source at the Pentagon says they are trying to contract, quote-unquote, as much of this money as possible. In addition, the White House still has a little less than $5 billion left over from Congress appropriation for new weapons to replenish US stockpiles. According to the media, the Biden administration hopes to contract these funds in full by the end of the term. Earlier it was reported that Biden had asked Congress to allocate another $24 billion for military aid to Ukraine and replenish the stockpiles of US weapons that had been transferred to Kyiv. But the incoming Republican-dominated Congress is cool to this request. At the same time, according to Reuters sources, Biden's team is preparing an arms package for Ukraine worth $725 million. As noted in the publication, among the planned deliveries, anti-tank weapons, anti-personnel mines, drones, Stinger missiles, ammunition for HIMARS systems, and cluster munitions that can be used in GMLRS missiles. We would really appreciate if you could recommend us to your friends and family, as well as share information on social media. This way more people would learn about the podcast and truth about Russia's invasion. The Economist assesses that Ukraine may have lost between 60 to 100,000 military killed over nearly 3 years of Russia's full-scale invasion, with around 400,000 likely to have been seriously wounded, reports NV. The assessment is based on the data from Western intelligence agencies, defense officials, open sources, and the UA Losses website. Journalists highlight that all the data and reports mentioned are difficult to independently verify. Moreover, these figures may not always account for soldiers who are missing in action or those who are presumed dead, adding uncertainty to the reported casualty numbers. Nevertheless, they offer an approximation of the death toll. The publication reports that Russia has lost around 200,000 soldiers killed during this period. Journalists emphasize that the number of casualties in both countries as a percentage of their total population is higher than the combined US losses during the Vietnam and Korean wars. Their combat death toll is fast approaching America's losses in the Second World War. Thank you for listening to the Highlights from Ukraine podcast. We're a commercial initiative of just two people and we need your help to grow. Share information about the podcast, rate us in the app, subscribe to our Patreon. With your support, we are getting better. We call on you to demand from governments of your countries to impose the toughest sanctions possible on Russia and its citizens to stop their invasion of Ukraine.